In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God and our Mother, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Fireside with Fathers. Tonight, I am excited, first of all, that we're starting well. Thanks be to God, no kings so far in all this technology. I think we were stormed by one of those cyber drones they were saying last time, which picked up on us and got us. But tonight I'm actually very excited because Tracey O'Mahony has given us an interview. So I think this is the first time that she's actually given an interview. Tracey is a barrister. I'm going to read here just a bit of her bio. She's an Irish lawyer registered on the Roll of Practising Barristers held by the Legal Services Regulatory Authority. And Tracey qualified as a barrister in 2007 and has worked as a commercial in-house lawyer since this time. Since 2020, Tracey established the Irish Council for Human Rights to strengthen and defend human rights in Ireland. So, once again, Tracey, thank you so much for coming on. We've managed to get the Skype going as well, which is an old school thing, but it works. So thank you for saying yes to coming on tonight. And my idea tonight is basically just to give people kind of some small nuggets maybe, or even just a bit of reasons, facts on the upcoming referendum. As we were talking about before, it's usually kind of it's the yes, they're saying we're saying yes to women, we're saying yes to care, we're saying yes to family. And then we're kind of put into the corner. Well, what about the other side? Well, you're the ones that are going to say no to all that, and it kind of sounds negative, and maybe a lot of people won't be voting, or maybe a lot of people just think it's something symbolic. So tonight, maybe we can kind of just flesh that out a bit. Tracey, also, we've placed in the description your PowerPoints, because I didn't officially meet Tracey, but I was at one of her little stints there in Clonmel where she was giving basically these reasons, and they're in PowerPoint format. So we're going to have those in the description. If someone wants to slowly chew through them, that will be in the description along with other stuff that Tracey's putting out there. So thank you, Tracey, so much for coming tonight. We really appreciate this.
Thanks very much for the invitation, for the Luke. And as you said, it's the first time that I've given a presentation, so I hope it goes well. And like you said, we haven't had any IT glitches so far, so fingers crossed.
No, yeah, and hopefully it will go smoothly. So this whole thing, it seems like it's kind of just sprung up upon us. It's not really. I mean, from the other referendums, I'm not seeing so much campaigning either. It's not like the streets are flooded with big yeses and yellow, and bright colors. So, what's the deal here? How come it's gone so fast through, the system, and it seems like it's already upon us? It's next week, the 8th. What's going on?
Mm-hmm. Well, I suppose it's this Friday, the 8th, this Friday. And I think when I looked back and did all the research on both the family referendum and the care referendum, it appears to be the case that they've been trying to introduce amendments to Article 41, which is the family in the Irish Constitution, for a good number of decades, certainly since 1993, once you go back through all of the research. But certainly in terms of from the publication of the general scheme, which is the draft heads of the bill, that happened around the 5th of December, 5th, 6th of December. And between the 5th of December, I think about the 8th of December, 3-4 days was the time between the draft heads of the bill being published and the actual bill that TDs and senators had to vote on was actually published. So in terms of how quickly it went through the pre-bill process, particularly for a referendum, something that's going to amend the Constitution and that's going to be around for, I suppose, potentially forever if it's never amended again. But the speed at which it went through those stages it's nearly unheard of in terms of referendums. So I suppose that's the first very, very concerning thing. And the next very concerning thing is the fact that these bills didn't go through pre-legislative scrutiny. So what that means is before So you have the general schemes of the bill, which are the draft heads of the bill, and normally that's published. And what happens then is it goes through this process called pre-legislative scrutiny. And that's an opportunity for all of the members of Parliament in Ireland, in the Dáil and the Seanad, to review the wording in the bill, to understand where the wording came from, to see if there are recommendations or proposals that would be better put into the draft wording as opposed to what they actually have in it. And it means that all of the TDs and the senators have a potential to get involved in the process before it actually becomes a bill. And that was something that was brought into the Irish legislation process in around 2013, I think it was. I think it was 2013 as part of, it was all to do with the economic and banking crisis here, where it was felt that a small number of people, TDs and senators within the country, were effectively running the country and making legislation without every other member of the Dáil and the Seanad having some kind of a say in it. So it was brought in, I think, around 2013, and it was carried through then into the 2016 Dáil. And what's meant to happen is, at that time, it was agreed that all bills or pre-bills would go through this pre-legislative scrutiny process, except for in exceptional circumstances. And that was carried through for a number of years through like the standing orders in the Dáil and the Seanad, which are just the rules that govern how those bodies work, the Dáil and the Seanad. But then when we came to 2020 in Ireland, and obviously COVID came around and a lot of laws were being passed very, very quickly. A lot of TDs and senators were concerned with the speed at which laws were being passed in Ireland. And then it was June 2020 before a new government was formed in Ireland. At that time then they actually changed the pre-legislative process to say that pre-2020 it had to be done, carried out except for in exceptional circumstances, and they changed it to it could be waived in any circumstances that was agreed by a committee. So I suppose that's one of the reasons, a very long way of saying that's one of the reasons that this process has happened very, very quickly and it's come upon us very, very quickly, is because of, bypassing this pre-legislative scrutiny stage.
Well, and you mentioned the language, because I think language is very important and wording is very important. If you just skim through kind of like mainstream right now, which I don't recommend people doing, like following mainstream, because you're usually going to get into like a lot of trouble as far as emotions. It's always really appealing to the emotions, but like the general consensus you get is it's kind of, this is very pro family, it's very pro care. And maybe we can just start here, Tracey, with the 39th, the proposed referendum for the 39th Amendment. We can kind of pick through that maybe and go through some pros and cons. It's basically trying to, like, maybe if you want to get into there and see like what we're actually talking about, the language here, so we can kind of give people clarity. Like the whole idea is, let's see if we can give people clarity on what they're saying and really what's happening, what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So we have the two amendments taking place, or the two proposals taking place on Friday, the votes. So we have the 39th Amendment that they're referring to as the family referendum, and we have the 40th Amendment, which they're referring to as the care referendum. And as you were saying, it's very important to look at the language that they're using. So you see it in the media, they're talking about, the family referendum, the care referendum, and both of these things seem like, they're very positive proposals to benefit the family and to introduce care. But it's only when you look into the detail of what they're actually proposing that you see that it's not actually pro-family and it's not actually introducing any care obligations. So that's, as you said, that why it's important to actually look into the detail. So if we're looking at the 39th Amendment, which they're referring to as the family referendum, so it's Article 41 of the Constitution that deals with the family. And what that says is the state recognises the family as the natural, primary and fundamental unit group of society. And what they want to change it to is the state recognises the family, and these are the new words, whether founded on marriage or other durable relationships. So the important thing that they're doing there is they're changing the meaning of family, that it wouldn't just be based on marriage now, it would also be based on what they're referring to as other durable relationships. And the reason they're saying that is necessary is because they're saying the very basis of what a family is has changed over the last number of years, and we need to recognise and protect those other family structures. And what they're saying is that because the Constitution says that family is based on marriage, those other family structures that aren't based on marriage are neither recognised nor protected by the Constitution as it stands. And they're saying for that reason, we need to add in this term, other durable relationships. And what Roderick O'Gorman, the TD, the Minister proposing these changes, says is that the intention behind adding in that term, other durable relationships, is to ensure that lone parents, cohabiting couples without children, and cohabiting couples with children, that those three classes of people will now be protected and recognised by the Constitution. So that's what they're saying they want to do, and that's why they're saying it's necessary.
Well, if I'm on the outside and I'm just listening to it, I could say, well, fair enough. I mean, if they stay outside of the Constitution, which is supposed to be protecting them, I mean, you know, this is kind of opening up a hole for them to fit in there, and now they're going to be protected. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is, what the heck is a durable relationship if it's, because that could kind of, is it just to those three that you just mentioned, or could that kind of go more into other realities?
So I suppose to answer your first question, that, you know, because the family structures have changed over the last number of years, that it is reasonable and it is fair to recognise and protect those other types of family structures. So the first issue is that the Constitution, although in that Article 41 does make specific reference to the family being based on marriage, what former Supreme Court Judge Brian Walsh has said is that other articles in the Constitution can be availed of and have been availed of to recognise families that are referred to as natural families, and they're families that are not families based on marriage. So the claim by the government that families other than the marital family are not recognised or protected by the Constitution doesn't actually hold up to scrutiny. And that's the first thing to note. And that's the reason that I think the language is very, very important, because a lot of the time you see in the media, if somebody is suggesting that they would be inclined to vote no to the family referendum, there's nearly a suggestion that you don't think that lone parents or that cohabiting couples with or without children that are not married shouldn't actually be valued and protected by the Constitution. Whereas in actual fact, it may be the case that somebody is voting no because they realise those people already are protected and vindicated through the Constitution. So that's the first point. And then on your second point in relation to durable relationships, across the political spectrum, between, you know, political TDs, senators and political parties, people who are even voting in favour of this referendum, they have all stated that they do not know what a durable relationship is. So when Roderick O'Gorman TD says a durable relationship is intended to include and protect lone parents, cohabiting couples with children and cohabiting couples without children, he cannot make that claim because the term is undefined, so it will be for the courts to decide. So that means two things. Number one, that lone parents, cohabiting couples, they may not actually be recognised and protected by using this term. That's the first thing. And second of all, we do not know how far that term will actually extend. So a lot of TDs and senators have raised concerns that the term other durable relationships could extend to people living together that aren't in an intimate relationship. The Electoral Commission raised a concern that it could actually mean something as benign as people getting Christmas cards in joint names. Michael McNamara, TD, has said that it could potentially extend to people in polygamous marriages. Senator Sharon Keoghan has raised the concern that it could perhaps extend to foster children in relation to contesting the will of their foster parents, or it could extend to people in extramarital affairs contesting the will of married people. And finally, a good number of TDs and senators, I think in proportion, the most number of TDs and senators have raised concerns in relation to immigration and reunification rights. That this term, other durable relationships, could actually extend and open the floodgates to immigration. So, first of all, so the term other durable relationships is not defined in the Constitution, and it's going to be left for the courts to decide what it means.
Well, it's a messy situation. So sorry, I think I'm going a bit too fast, but you're really down on this, and you're obviously this is your stuff. So just to get this straight, it's incorrect to say that it's just the family based on marriage that is protected right now as we have the Constitution. So that's incorrect. Like it would be incorrect to say it's just only the family based on marriage, as you were just saying. The first point.
Absolutely. That's
Okay.
completely incorrect. And even just to reiterate that point, as recently as the 22nd of January this year, there was a challenge to the Supreme Court by an unmarried father of 3 who was challenging a social welfare payment. He was trying to get a widower's pension. His cohabiting wife or cohabiting not wife, his cohabiting partner had unfortunately died. They had 3 children together. They were together for, I believe, about 20 years. And he had gone to social welfare to try and get a widower's pension. He was denied it there. He went to the High Court. He was denied it there. And he went to the Supreme Court. And on the 22nd of January this year, the Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional to deny him a widower's pension simply because he was not married. So that's further vindication and acknowledgement that it's not just the marital family that's recognised and protected by the Constitution, but at the same time, we already knew that from previous case law. And as I said, that Supreme Court judge or former Supreme Court judge, Brian Walsh, who confirmed that many years ago, that natural families are both recognised and protected by the Constitution.
Wow. Well, you see, just with that, thank you, Tracey. Like, just with that, the clarity, I think, is so important. Like, this whole idea is just to get clarity and get facts and truth out there, and not really just be kind of pushed around by the whims of these, sensationalist kind of headlines that can kind of make someone feel like, oh, it's just, I'm not with the times, or I have to get with it, or who am I to stop people? So that's just the first point. That's great. I'm a bit worried about the durable relationship thing, because like I said, with language nowadays, you can kind of liquefy everything, because if you say it kind of in a way, that can mean this and then it can mean that, it's really just up into interpretations. So if anybody can interpret it, and the fact that you can get a Christmas card to make you a durable relationship, I mean, what does that mean? Like, he could come, maybe getting something legal off of me, or, it does sound very, very messy, and hopefully that gets people's attention just from that word. So is there anything else we want to get on with the 39th, if we can keep going on this?
Let me see now. I suppose just in relation to the potential consequences, if a yes vote does go through on this, I suppose one thing that it will do is it will potentially sever the special relationship that exists between family and marriage. That's one thing that it will do. The second thing that it may do is it could create taxation, succession, guardianship implications for people who are cohabiting. So in my particular circumstances, I'm cohabiting. I know if I enter into a marriage, and I'm cohabiting for 20 years, but if I enter into a marriage, I know what that means legally. I know that from this date forward, it means X, Y, and Z. And I think people are entitled to legal certainty. If this actually comes in, I don't know, will somebody at some point determine that I've been in a durable relationship for X number of years, and that I have there's certain legal consequences that flow from that. So I think there are a lot of people that they say they're trying to protect and recognise through this, that number one, don't want it, and number two, don't know that there are potential consequences coming down the road for them. So I think that's quite concerning. And the other thing just that I would like to say as well is, I think, and it's one of these things as well where there's a manipulation of language, where they're trying to say that the purpose of this is that there are so many families throughout the ages in Ireland that haven't been recognised and protected, and nearly that they've been shamed into the background of society. And they're talking particularly about lone parents. I grew up in a family, a lone parent family, and apparently I'm supposed to be terribly offended by the wording in the Constitution, but I think it's something that we as a society, I think over the last good number of years, we nearly look for things to be offended by. I'm not offended by the Constitution, first of all, because I think it is right that the Constitution protects the family and protects marriage. And I do think it's very important that that special bond exists between marriage and the family. And I also think that people who decide not to enter into marriages, they're entitled to legal certainty as well. So I think there are a lot of consequences coming down the line here that people haven't contemplated. And that people are going to have to deal with at some point. And I think it was something Senator Michael McDowell mentioned as well. He said that obviously within Ireland, we have a lot of farms and that kind of family relationships around property. And potentially going to be an awful lot of consequences for people who have decided not to enter into marriages that are now going to be determined to be in durable relationships that give rise to all kind of inheritance, taxation, income tax consequences that haven't been contemplated. And what I really hope is, And it's one of the reasons that I do these presentations. I'm very, very happy if somebody looks at the presentation and what they say to themselves is, I don't mind that the term other durable relationship is undefined. I don't mind that lone parents may not be included. I don't mind that it may open up the floodgates to immigration. I don't mind that there may be taxation and succession consequences, inheritance consequences if I vote yes to this. I don't actually have a problem with that once people actually realise what the amendment is about and what the potential consequence of it is going to be. So it's about making informed decisions and just trying to get the information out there to people. And then once the people make up their own mind, provided they have all of the information, I don't actually have an issue with that. But it's just down the line, people kind of saying, well, I didn't realise that's what that meant. And I think we all have an obligation, you know, as humans, but as citizens of the country too, when we're agreeing to certain amendments to the Constitution that are going to be here for lifetimes to come. And I'm not somebody who has children, so to a certain degree, I don't need to be worried about, you know, 60, 80, 100 years time. But for the people that have children, and the thoughts that they're trying to dismantle the family and sever the special tie that exists between marriage and the family, I would just ask people that have children to recognise the fact that this is going to have serious consequences for your children down the line, and just to do your research and, you know, protect your family and protect your children.
Well, it's what you said about information. I mean, what we're talking about is we're starting to tamper and tinker with foundational, you know, truths here. Like when you're starting to play with what a foundation is made of, I mean, it's no surprise that, you know, if the building starts falling at some stage, because we're starting to tamper with, you know, this is the groundwork of society. And once these things, like I said, become more a bit liquefied and they're not really meaning this and it can mean that, and people are okay with that because they don't want to offend, or who am I to, you know, say this, or you know, it's just, we're kind of entering into this society where, gosh, look, if I'm in my house and I'm kind of keeping to my own things, like it doesn't really concern me, but it actually does. Like, these things have consequences, like you were saying. I'm interested a bit in the immigration consequence because, I mean, we mentioned loads of consequences in there, and like you mentioned, and hopefully if you guys want to go back to the PowerPoints and the presentations, that's all in the description. If you kind of want to just go through them slowly, they're there. And Tracey's given a very quick run through. I mean, she has the whole thing well thought out, and it's all in presentation, so I'm kind of making her go fast here, so I apologize, but they are in the description if you want to go back and look at them. But what would these consequences look like as far as immigration's concerned, Tracey? You want to get into that?
So I think Michael McNamara TD, he raised it very, very well during the Dáil debates, which is the Parliament debates when this bill was going through, our Dáil, which is one of the houses of our Parliament. He asked the question of Roderick O'Gorman, so that's the TD who's proposing these amendments, and he said, would polygamous marriages be considered a durable relationship? And Roderick O'Gorman TD said, absolutely no, that there's no way in the world. And then Michael McNamara TD kind of said, well, I don't know how you can come to that conclusion considering a durable relationship isn't actually defined within the Constitution. And what Michael McNamara was getting at was that currently under Irish immigration law, if somebody comes into this country and if they seek asylum here and if they're granted asylum here, the law currently says that they're entitled to bring one wife and I believe the children from that marriage. But we obviously know that some people coming into this country from other countries may, you know, there may be laws in those countries that allow, you know, more than one marriage to be legal. So we potentially have people coming into this country that right now will be able to bring in one wife and the children from that marriage, but may down the line be able to claim that, fair enough, one wife and the children from that marriage, that's the marital family, but I have these other durable relationships with these 5 other wives and, you know, the 30 or the 40 kids, you know, from those different marriages or durable relationships. So Michael McNamara raised that as a very significant concern. Another senator, Michael McDowell, who was a former Taoiseach here and also the former Attorney General, he raised similar concerns regarding immigration and reunification rights. So I think that Ireland currently has very, very preferential social welfare benefits in comparison to other European countries. And I think to a certain degree, it may be the case that people will be shopping around for, the best countries to go to. And if we change some of our laws around reunification or immigration, it may be the case that an awful lot more people will be trying to come into this country, and trying to come into this country at a time when we have a housing crisis, a health crisis. It's very, very difficult to get school places. So there are a lot of things, I think, structurally falling down around us in this country, and we don't have the resources to actually open up the floodgates any further. And that's the potential consequence of this, is that the floodgates will be opened up to immigration further.
Just to give people an idea as well, I mean, people have been following a bit of the farmers, so they're getting a bit clued in. When I'm saying other people that we could have listeners in the States, in Australia, like, so you're doing well kind of when you're saying something, you're kind of giving a bit of a definition, so thank you for that, Tracey. But just to give you guys an idea, I'm speaking with this woman who's she's not making it for the rent, so she's a single mom with 6 kids, so there's a separation at some point in there, and she's consulting now like homeless agencies, trying to find out what she can do, because she has about 5 weeks and it's just getting impossible. She can't pay it. And then I was talking to another man. He has 2 degrees. He's working 3 jobs, and his wife has actually a very good job as well. And they're just making it. They're paying off the housing. So it is. And he was asking me, he's like, well, what do you think, a normal lad coming out of secondary school, like his prospects there of living, what that's going to look like. So you're right. Just to give kind of people an idea, like the situation is pretty dire and grave here when it comes to that. And I don't think people are people are on board. I think they are seeing that, living that. But I mean, these things do have consequences down the road. They have big consequences, especially with the immigration.
But I also think we also have record numbers of homeless Irish in the country, compared to any other time since they've been gathering statistics. I'm not sure, just off the top of my head, I'm not sure, is it around 12,000 at the moment, with 4,000 children, something like that.
Wow.
So when we're talking about, potentially bringing more people into the country, it's nearly unthinkable that there are that many homeless people in Ireland, in a country that's, meant to be extremely wealthy from a GDP perspective, and as well as that, possibly for, international people as well. It's so bad in this country now in terms of housing that when they're bringing in international protection applicants, they're actually nearly commandeering entire hotels to actually house them, because there is literally no housing in the country. That's how bad things are here. So whatever potential there is for, an Irish person to get a house, bringing other people in from other countries, there's no way in the world that they're going to be able to get access to housing, and it's just creating an absolute avalanche of problems within the country. And that's just from a housing perspective, not even to mention our healthcare in this country.
I'm just going to have a Joe Schmo kind of question here as well. It seems a bit naive, the document, like the referendum and what they're proposing. Is this like naivety, or is there something behind this, Trace? I'm just kind of like trying to, just think out loud here. Like, what's the deal here? Like, could it really just be that? Because I don't think, like, when you were just putting down the facts, it's just not the case. Like what it seems like they're claiming. So, what's the story here? Is this like naivety, or is this some kind of like agenda going on?
I'll be honest with you, we always have this discussion / argument at home where my partner always thinks that people are not as intelligent as I think they are. A lot of the time I would think that, these things have been thought through. I think a lot of things that we've seen probably over the last maybe 10 years or so, a lot of countries seem to be in lockstep with a lot of different things that are happening, whether you're talking about climate change, whether you're talking about COVID regulations, whether you're talking about digital IDs, CBDCs, hate speech laws. So I think when you see an awful lot of these things happening, if they were just happening in one country, I might say, well, that's an isolated incident. But when you see it happening in country after country after country after country, I think we'd be the naive ones at that point to say that there isn't something going on behind this, that there isn't something coming down from, a higher authority, perhaps directing different countries to do certain things. So I certainly think that there's an agenda at play to dismantle the family. And I think from my perspective, it all goes back to, in my view at least, it all goes back to Marxism and a desire to abolish the family. And it all goes back to, what they consider to be oppression in society, and trying to solve the idea of oppression in society by creating more oppression. And one of the structures that they see as being in the way of that is the family structure. And even in the Communist Manifesto, it does make reference to the desire to abolish the family.
Yeah, liquefy the solids, and we've been seeing it across the board, like whether it be, like schools. I have a friend here. He's teaching high level. Well, he was in MIT in engineering, and he says what he's teaching now is stuff that he was learning in secondary school over here, and people are all like, praising education, but he's just saying, listen, it is actually really dropping, and like kind of like the whole system tried to liquefy religion, the church, family structures that would be very strong. You can see that we just kind of like liquefy, and it's funny how it's happening. Basically, it's like a bit of an arbitrary language that just doesn't, it can be ambiguous. Like an ambiguous language. So that's great. I like the rhythm that we're taking here, Tracey, because I think it's, I'm trying to make this accessible as well. So I think this is good. I think we're doing well. Do you want anything else here on the 39th? Do you want to go into the 40th amendment, or?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else there on the 39th. Really.
Okay, so this one's here. Is this where we're getting like the archaic language, and also I think I've been seeing this a lot as well, that Ireland needs to vote, like just once and for all to stop being so sexist, and kind of like the language that they're using could be also archaic. Do you want to kind of start with that maybe?
Sure, yeah. So this is what they're referring to as the care referendum. And the purpose of this is so between the two referendums, the family referendum and the care referendum, we're talking about the exact same article in the Constitution for both of the amendments. And we're back to Article 41, the family again. And in this case, what they want to do is they want to delete Article 41.12. And that article states, in particular, the state recognises that by her life within the home, woman gives to the state a support without which the common good cannot be achieved. The state shall therefore endeavour to ensure that mothers shall not be obliged by economic necessity to engage in labour to the neglect of their duties in the home. So they want to delete both of those provisions from Article 41, and they want to add in a new provision called Article 42B, entitled Care, and that would state, the state recognises that the provision of care by members of a family to one another by reasons of the bonds that exist among them gives to society a support without which the common good cannot be achieved, and should strive to support such provisions. So when you were referring to the language being outdated or sexist, so that's what has been said across the board, that the language in Article 41.12 is outdated, sexist, archaic. And when you look at a lot of the TDs and the senators, so the members of our parliament here, what a lot of them have said is that the wording in the Constitution states that a woman's place is in the home. So they have said that throughout all of the debates in the Dáil and the Seanad, or Parliament. Everywhere, they've stated that a woman's place is in the home. And then if you even look at the media articles here from the Irish Times, from RTE, who is our national broadcaster, they use the same term, a woman's place is in the home. So I think for that reason, it's really, really important to actually look back at the wording and just clarify what the wording says. So the wording says, the state recognises that by her life within the home, not that a woman's place is in the home, that by her life within the home, woman gives to the state a support without which the common good cannot be achieved. What the Constitution is actually saying is that you cannot put a value on the support that women give within the home. And they say that the support is so valuable that mothers, not women now, mothers should not be forced out into the labour market due to economic necessity. That's what it says, that mothers, the value of the care that they provide within the family is so important, so profoundly important, that they shouldn't be forced out into the labour market due to economic necessity. And what we're told is that that's archaic, that it's sexist, and that it's stereotypical. But if you actually look at the data, if you look at census data, over the last number of years, women in Ireland predominantly carry out care work both inside the home and outside of the home. And what I've heard from people then after that is, well, the reason they do that is because, the men won't do it and the women don't want to do it and they have no choice but to do it. But if you actually look at the polls on it, there were a number of polls that were carried out in or about 2017 from the Journal and from, I think it's the Irish Independent, two newspapers here in Ireland. And both of those polls said that the majority of women, if given the choice, would stay at home to rear their own children. That's what they have said. So I think it's quite disingenuous to say that the language is outdated and sexist, considering it reflects the reality of how women would choose to live their lives if they were given a choice. If they weren't forced out into the labour market due to economic necessity, they would choose to stay at home to rear their own children. So I don't see how the language can be sexist and outdated if it reflects how women would choose to live their lives.
Oh, very good point. That's well said. And that's also beautiful. Yeah. And it's good to know that. And that's, yeah, you're right. Because that's what we're hearing. That's what we're hearing is like the woman in the home, the woman in the home. And they're just pounding that through. And the more you say it and the more you hear it, I think the more, if people aren't trying to get informed, if they're not really trying to go out there, I think it can kind of start sinking to them. So that's great. That was a great point.
Just if I could just say one other thing, actually.
Yes.
That Supreme Court judge that I was referring to previously, Brian Walsh, that former Supreme Court judge, what he actually said was that these contentions about the Constitution stating that a woman's place is in the home, that these contentions have been made since 1937 when the Constitution was founded. And what he actually said was that it appears to nearly be a reflex to the word home and woman being in the same sentence. And that as soon as certain people see the word woman and home in the same sentence, that it kind of rings off alarm bells for them, and they nearly insinuate that the Constitution says something that it doesn't say. And it's one thing for members of the public, I think, to read a document and to think that it says one thing when it actually says something quite different. But it's a whole different story for members of the Parliament, elected members of government, particularly the TD who is proposing these amendments, and the media or national broadcaster who we have to pay a television license for to fund. It's quite a different story for those people to be going, into the Dáil or on the media and saying that the Constitution says something that it does not say. So just to be clear, the Constitution does not state a woman's place is in the home. It says a woman, the state recognises that by her life within the home, woman gives to the state a support without which the common good cannot be achieved. And that Supreme Court judge, Brian Walsh, said that's a matter of fact. It may not be a fact that many people like, but it is a fact.
Wow. What would you say here? I'm just going off of some of the claims as well. That the Constitution needs to be amended to create an obligation on the state to support those care relationships. That's one of the claims that are being made.
Mm-hmm. So I suppose the new article that they're adding in is Article 42B, and that's going to be titled Care. And what that says is the state recognises that the provision of care by members of a family to one another by the reasons of the bonds that exist among them gives to society a support without which the common good cannot be achieved, and shall strive to support such provision. So the important things are a couple of things. First of all, it's care that family members give to each other. It does not place an obligation on the state or on the wider community to provide care. It's recognising care between family members. So it's limited in that capacity to begin with. And second of all, what it does after that then is once those care relationships are in existence between members of the family, the state or society, sorry, I'm just looking here. The state recognises, so thereafter, the state would strive to support those care relationships. So the relationships or the care is between members of a family. It's not between the state to members of a family. And the only obligation on the state is to strive to support care between those family members. And what Senator Michael McDowell, who, as I said, was the former Taoiseach and the former Attorney General, what he said is that that language, the word strive, he said using that type of language makes it virtually impossible to enforce it through the courts. So that word strive just means we'll try. So you're not going to be able to go into the court and say, excuse me, Judge, that the state didn't try hard enough to support the care relationships between my members of a family. So there's no obligation on the state to do anything except to try and support care between family members. And if you go back to the Dáil debates, so the debates in our parliament when this bill was being pushed through by Roderick O'Gorman, the minister proposing the amendments, what he actually said in the Dáil debates was this amendment to the Constitution, if it's pushed through a referendum, will not create an obligation on the state to provide any list of provisions in relation to care. So he has said that outright in the Dáil debates in our parliament, that it will not actually provide an obligation on the state to provide a certain list of care supports to members of a family. So I think there's a lot of talk in the media that this referendum is going to do certain things in relation to care provisions, whereas if you actually look at the Dáil debates, they're telling you it will not. That's not what it's designed to do. So I think it comes back to, again, what's the purpose behind this referendum? Mm-hmm. And it's important to recognise that in this referendum, the words mother will be taken out of the Constitution entirely, and the word woman will be taken out of the Constitution entirely, and also their protection for mothers not to be forced out into the labour market due to economic necessity, that will be taken out, as opposed to just extending that protection to both parents or to either or parents. And what it's going to be replaced with is an obligation on the state to strive to support care between family members. And as I said, former Attorney General Michael McDowell said that language makes it virtually unenforceable through the courts.
But how could you, going back to this, the ironic thing is that Friday not International Women's Day. Like, you're taking woman and mother out. You see, when I start hearing that, when you start tampering with, you see, the whole time we're in this conversation, as a priest, I'm also thinking in our ministry, because our ministry is very family orientated, because the family is the nucleus, and any pastoral attention and any help, whether it be anything to the family, is just like primary. Like that's a main kind of goal for us. So you're taking mother out, the implications that it has. Woman, like how woman is also, this is also for me like a foundational thing that we're taking, because the woman is basically, when you think about it, she's the one that's holding up and supporting, whether it be in the care and the love and the support, and just her figure. That is like that's the center, and that's the basis, that's the foundation of a family. So we're taking the family out completely, and then I just think it's so blatant to take out woman and mother, just wipe it off. I don't know how women can actually even feel like that's something that's going to be caring and pro-woman. I don't know.
But I think one of the worst things is that they've convinced women that this is actually empowering. They've convinced them that it's empowering because this wording is sexist and outdated, that it's empowering to take this wording out of the Constitution, because they've told women and men alike, I suppose, that the wording of the Constitution says one thing when in actual fact it says something completely different.
Wow. And I think that's at the root of the problem in a lot of things. But yourself, Tracey, we're in a very fast-paced culture where I was just reading an article recently. It's not even entertainment's not even a thing anymore. In all the big entertainment industries are going under. They're basically investing in other things, buying legacies of old artists, because the new artists are going to be AI and whatnot. But it's a fight for attention span. So we've become like marketplaces, and our data and our attention span has become basically the new revenue. So it's really just to keep us hooked and addicted. So, the culture we're living in is so fast and it's so quick. Apparently, the generation that's coming up, they're not capable of reading 3 paragraphs straight, because they're not capable of deep thought, because they're not capable of applying their attention or critically thinking. So these are all problems that are coming up. And like you said, down the chute, what's coming. If you fast forward in 10 years, I don't know what kind of society you would be looking at if this seems like something that we're just swallowing hook, line, and sinker and just going with the flow.
But what's really scary is when you say, the generation that are coming up, that they can't even read 3 paragraphs. But they're, I would imagine, the generation who they'll see the snippet on the front of the newspaper that says the Constitution states a woman's place is in the home. And that's what that's what they'll remember, and they won't look any further into it. Whereas, you know, I know obviously with the type of presentations that I do, and I'm expecting people to sit down and listen to me for 45 minutes, read through the Constitution and case law. And, you know, if you can only get people to look at the snippet, the top part of a newspaper, I don't know what hope we have of getting the younger generation to actually carry out critical thought into anything going forward. And I think that's probably the scariest thing for me, certainly, looking at what's potentially coming down the line. And I think an awful lot of this stuff, you know, with AI, and even I see people with this chat GBT, and I think the amount of people that are using that, you know, chat GBT, and I can see it myself, even with people, that they're losing the ability to actually write something themselves, because they're using an awful lot of AI to do things that they should be able to do themselves, and things they should actually want to do themselves. So I think there's a lot of things coming at us from a lot of different angles, and potentially a lot of these things are all driven by, you know, one agenda. And I think, you know, that the lack of attention span, I think it really helps governments and medias if they're trying to push a particular narrative. Because obviously then you have people like us who are, you know, trying to look into these things and trying to do a great deal of research to make sure that we make an informed decision on something. But unfortunately, I fear that we may be the minority, and that we may be more of a minority as we go forward, and that just doesn't bode well for the future.
Yeah, no, and I mean the context of Ireland for people living outside of Ireland is also, you know, massive tax haven for big tech, and just the massive databases that they're building out here, and the interest that people go virtual, and the lengths of our lockdowns here in this country. It's all kind of in their interest. I would say that it's a snippet kind of generation, you know, where they can kind of just keep people with their pleasures and keep them kind of satisfied there, and then what's going on behind the scenes. So yeah, no, we always say it, we always repeat that we do have to make an effort in this generation. Like, the technology is very addictive, and these new things that are coming out, but we have to be very serious when it comes to like the critical thinking part. There was a question that just came up there, Tracey. I don't know if you're comfortable, if we should go into a bit of Q&A, or if you wanted to keep going on the 40th. No problem. But this is, what do you think of the sudden change this week of some leftist TDs and public figures to call for a yes/no vote?
The yes/no vote I find absolutely terrifying, because I think for me the family referendum is the scarier one, probably from an immigration perspective. So I think they're talking about yes on the family and no on the care. But I actually think even though I detest the idea of them taking out mother and woman from the Constitution, I think it's probably more symbolic. I think it's probably more ideologically driven from a gender perspective. But I'm not sure what real world consequences it will have. But I do think for the family referendum, in terms of open borders and durable relationships, I think that it could have very, very real term consequences, and quite quickly. So when I see them coming out with a yes vote on the family and a no on the care, it actually terrifies me, to be honest. Yeah,
no, I agree. And what do you think as far as like the public mood goes as well? It's another question there, is like, as far as the vote, would the public mood be like no, or do you think they would just be no, I'm not going to vote? Or
what I've heard, everybody that I've spoken to, and what they're telling me is that everybody they have spoken to, they're all saying no. But I think you know, the people that I'm speaking to, I'm in a bubble with. So I can't believe that that's the way that it's going to go. No. I don't think that we've had a vote go our way in an awful long time. But I did hear Senator Michael McDougall, he believes that it's going to go 60-40 in our favour. I'm not sure, is that kind of, you know, positive thinking? I probably tend to be more pessimistic anyways. I suppose that drives you to do more. And, you know, I have another one of these. I think I've done about maybe 4 or 5 of these presentations around the country. I have another one tomorrow evening in Killarney. So I think having a pessimistic attitude drives you to keep doing them. From my perspective, I would fear that it would be a no. or
Yeah.
sorry, that it would be a yes, sorry, a yes,
I was going to say, you're just going to
yeah.
pessimistic and then you're out to the no.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Sorry,
good.
yes. I would fear that it would be a yes, but I would also fear that a lot of people wouldn't come out to vote. I think they don't understand the significance of particularly the family referendum, and I would fear that they wouldn't actually come out to vote, a lot of people.
Well, you mentioned that before, Tracey. I don't know if it was if we were on or off, but that you think that maybe there hasn't been so much campaigning, there hasn't been so much push as far as like with the other referendums, because it's kind of like just to keep people really at bay. It's like a symbolic thing anyways. It's not that big of a deal. And like with the NGOs and the people that they would have here anyways, they'd probably be able to push it over with, or just get people not to vote as it is.
Mm-hmm. So in this country, we have, I believe it's about 33,000 NGOs, non-government organisations that are government funded. Obviously, not all of those 33,000 NGOs are funded, but I would imagine there's a very, very decent amount of them that are funded. And I would imagine that a good deal of those NGOs, obviously, they're campaigning for yes votes. They will be voting yes themselves. And the government have, in no uncertain terms, told them that their funding is contingent on them promoting a yes vote. I believe it was Roderick O'Gorman, the TD, the minister proposing these amendments, basically came out and said that any NGO that's campaigning for a no vote would have to explain themselves. He literally came out and said that. And I think a government minister, or I think it was, I'm not sure, was it Fergus O'Dowd, the TD, said that it sounded like a threat regarding funding. And he's, one of the government TDs.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah, so...
Well, look,
like you said, if they even just got the NGOs to come out and, and that could potentially be one of the reasons that there isn't a really big, push and energy behind this campaign.
Well, look, we're here. I mean, this is just, David against Goliath. It's always kind of the same scenario. We're doing our thing. I just think to get people to get a bit of the information to start thinking, and also, if it is an info war, whatever you want to call it, but to just help get it out there as well, like get this to other people. Tracey's going to be in Killarney tomorrow as well. Like I said, look at the PowerPoint description. It's all there in the video here at below. If you can just look at there and you can slowly go through it. I just think, honestly, that's what you were just saying with the facts versus the claims. There was pretty much enough, Tracey, and hopefully that people don't think, which I'm hoping we're not just in the bubble as well, which we could be. I sometimes tend to be pessimistic as well when it comes to these things. But if you can kind of try to get it out to the bubble and just have it just on the basis of talking truth and facts and seeing the information, that's all you have to do. And just kind of just give it to the people, and they can listen to it and they can hear it, and maybe hopefully, can get a bit of an influence. So, well, that's great. I don't know if you had any last words or any last thoughts, Tracey. I'm happy with this, how this has gone. Like I said, I think it served its purpose.
I think literally the only thing that I would say is come out and vote. I think we all talk about the importance of voting, and then it comes to the actual day and something crops up, and and then we kind of just think, Asher, my one vote won't make a difference. Yeah. Every vote makes a difference. So please come out and vote. Yeah,
and I know it's always better to be sitting by the fire, and especially if it's lashing rain and just looking out the window. But you're right, you got to make the sacrifice, get out there. And so, lads, we'll leave you here with just one thought here, that our Blessed Mother did say in Fatima that these final battles will be over marriage and the family, and we've been seeing it slowly just creeping up. It's just being attacked, one thing after another. And she is a mom, and she is caring, and she knows what's good and best for us. So we got to keep this all in the prayers, and especially, try to get this out there and share it. So I'll leave you guys all with my blessing. Thank you so much, Tracey, for coming on, and we really appreciate it. And hopefully you guys can check out what Tracey's been doing as well. Like, that's all in the description. The Irish Council for Human Rights. Check that out. There are a couple videos there as well. And we'll leave you guys with my blessings. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next Monday. May Almighty God bless you, keep you safe and free from all harm. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. God bless you guys. See you later.